Hello. Now, where have all the romantic comedies gone? That is a question that we're going to be asking today and hopefully answering on this episode of Total Hollywood with me, Amy Rapier, and my fellow showbiz reporter, Sandro Minetti.
You had me at hello. I'll have what she's having. They don't write them like that anymore, Amy.
No, they don't. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's obviously all the fault of Iron Man. Yes, blame Downey. Now, ever since Marvel hit it big with their first MCU movie in 2008, the Hollywood studios realised they could make huge money on these blockbuster films. And ever since then, Hollywood has been obsessed with two kinds of movies. They'll make big-budget superhero pictures, or they'll make quirky indies with an eye on the Oscars. And the mid-range films, like the romantic comedies, miss out. Yes, they tend to be profitable, but they're not as profitable as these superhero blockbusters. So they've fallen victim to economics. Am I right? I usually am.
God, it's a sad thing to think about it, isn't it? Also, I never would have thought that I'd come into this day and end up blaming Robert Downey Jr. for the death of the rom-com. I mean, when you think about it, it makes sense because there's very few rom-coms that you can see having any kind of longevity in terms of sequels and universes and such. And if that's what we're relying on to make our money, then of course they're going to go out the window.
Well, exactly. You don't see Disney Plus doing Pretty Woman spin-off series, you know, and we don't get When Harry Met Sally 17 or something like that, like we do with Fast and the Furious and other franchises. So it's all about money. But I also think it might have something to do with societal issues, because if you look at the plot lines of these rom-coms from the golden age, let's say 1988 to 1994, a lot of them don't hold up today because you could not get away with a script about a woman waiting around for some handsome Prince Charming to come and rescue her. It's very much out of step and rightly so. So is society to blame for breaking our hearts?
You know what? Saying society is to blame makes it seem like it's a bad thing that we've progressed. And
it's a good thing.
It's a good thing, it is. But also it is a bit of a shame because I'd be lying if I didn't say that I had many, many hours of my life dedicated to watching rom-coms. My biggest rom-com era was probably when I was an early teenager, tween age, if you will. It would be the kind of thing that I'd always watch with friends on the weekends on Fridays. We'd have sleepovers. We'd go and pick up a bunch of DVDs from Blockbuster and we'd sit and watch our rom-coms. And that was when I blew through most of them. And then I look back at it and I'm like, wow, maybe that wasn't the best sort of set of role models and set of aspirational stories for me to be looking at. Because like you say, it does tend to fall back on the woman giving up everything for a man.
Yeah, I mean, when you and the girls were just painting each other's toenails watching Katherine Heigl on a Friday night, what kind of messages were you getting about romance from these movies? And do you think they've maybe set an impossibly high standard for a generation of movie viewers when it comes to their real-life expectations in romance?
You know what? I know you were joking about sitting and painting each other's nails, but we absolutely did. You stick on 27 dresses, you paint each other's nails, you do little designs on them. It's the perfect setup, I tell you. But really, actually, yes, you get these unattainable, impossible standards for your romantic relationships. Everything has to be fireworks on New Year and beautiful white weddings in mansion houses and things, because it's really not that fun to depict how things really happen in real life, where you might meet your partner through a friend of a friend, you might meet them at work or whatever. We want the romance, we want the fireworks. And if I spent my whole childhood watching these, there's no way that hasn't sort of wormed its way into my brain.
Good point about the mansions as well. When you mention that, I reflect on the fact that pretty much all romantic comedies are middle class. Is it only rich people who fall in love? I mean, what kind of message is that sending?
I mean, yeah, maybe it's just because it's not so aesthetically pleasing to depict the real life loves. It's much more charming. It's much more Hollywood friendly for us to be able to watch something happen in a beautiful location. And the kind of locations that you get for normal people are much less aesthetically pleasing. You like a terraced house in the middle of Blackpool, for example, doesn't quite have the same appeal as an old Victorian
That's where I
home.
grew up. That's my hometown. People say that Paris is the city of love. Paris got nothing on Blackpool as far as I'm concerned. Of all the towns in all the world, you had to pick my hometown. But, seriously, I think that, we need to question a lot of these plots through a modern lens. I mean, look at one of the most successful of all time, Pretty Woman. There's basically a fairy tale story, about somebody waiting for her handsome prince. In this case, it was a prostitute played by Julia Roberts waiting for Richard Gere, and that was a career-making performance by Julia Roberts, who gave such a great performance in it, alongside the always good Richard Gere. And interestingly, when we look back on that now, no other A-list Hollywood actress wanted to play it. It was offered first to Meg Ryan, Michelle Pfeiffer, Melanie Griffith, all the usual suspects, and they said no. And but Julia Roberts, I think she was something like 87th choice. They took a chance on her, and it worked out. Another wonder of the Hollywood casting system. Yeah.
Well, I guess back then, I would say we've probably moved past it a little now, but there's definitely had to have been some kind of shame, some kind of taboo against playing the role of a sex worker, because essentially, if we look around all of the romanticism of the movie, it is about a man paying a sex worker to do her job, and then they fall in love and all that. But when you strip it down to the bare essentials, it is incredibly problematic. The power dynamic there is not good at all, and also the kind of the if you introduce some class consciousness into it, the fact that this is a working woman and then a very, very rich, wealthy man. I always used to think it was the best moment of the movie was when she has her girl boss, working class winning moment, when she goes back into the shop and shows them all up because they judged her before. But at the end of the day, she's still only doing that with his money. So there's no winning for anyone other than the very rich man in this movie.
Well, the history of this movie is fascinating because originally it wasn't a romantic comedy, it was a dark thriller. It was written by the writer of the Steven Seagal action film Under Siege. It was originally called 3000. It's about a businessman who pays $3,000 for a night with a prostitute, and I think in the end kills her. But Disney needed a romantic comedy for that summer, so Jeffrey Katzenberg, who was running the movie business at that time, looks through the pile of scripts, gives it a swift rewrite, and goes, I know, I will turn this dark thriller into a romance, stick some great music on it, and there you go. And I think the best director of all time is Gary Marshall, who directed that movie. I thoroughly recommend his book, My Happy Days in Hollywood, because he writes in that, and also told me how Julia Roberts and Richard Gere did not get along at all during the making of that movie. Richard seemed, as the big star, seemed somewhat threatened by newcomer Julia being so good and stealing his phrase the scenes from him. She didn't find him particularly encouraging either. So what a great director to able to cover up the fact that these stars didn't actually like each other and create one of the great rom-coms of all time. Such is romantic comedy history. But you mentioned an interesting thing there about, it's a man taking advantage of a woman. Now, we all love Love Actually, but if you look at that film through a Me Too lens, the view that comes back is pretty ugly, right?
Ooh, you know what? When you first mentioned that to me, that completely recolored how I watched that movie. I've had endless evenings around Christmas time watching and rewatching that with my mum. And never until the moment that you said, hang on a second, really look at the dynamics going on there, did I stop and think, actually, every single one of these stories is uniquely uncomfortable.
It's all about men in power positions having romances with co-workers And it's the kind of thing that gets you kicked out of companies these days. But back not so many years ago, Richard Curtis was making an enduring fairy tale out of it. So yes, it was. Oh, I dream of falling in love with my rich boss or having an affair with him or something like that. I mean, yes, it's amazing what connects with the public, isn't it?
You know, the amount of people that must have come out of seeing that movie for the first time and thought, you know what, maybe it would be really romantic for me to buy my co-worker a necklace or to start pursuing my boss who just happens to be the Prime Minister. Trust me, neither of those things are ever going to turn out well.
No. Yeah, this is rom-coms for us. They're there was I mentioned before the golden period. I think it sort of started with When Harry Met Sally, which really set the template. That was at the end of the 80s. And then we had a glorious run, things like Four Weddings and a Funeral, still one of my favourite rom-coms, and probably the best British one. America did them so well. I love How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Thought Kate Hudson was superb in that, alongside All Right, Matthew McConaughey. You mentioned The Goddess, Katherine Heigl, of course. But when I think of the really good rom-coms, it's when you have super chemistry between the two leads. And I'll give you the example of The Wedding Singer with Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore. They ended up working together 3 times in rom-coms. Is there any other couple that you can think of that work sort of really, really well? And how important is that chemistry to make the rom-com work?
Oh, I think the chemistry is one of the most important things. And you mentioned Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore. My favourite of theirs is 50 First Dates, because even though it's an absolutely ridiculous concept, the movie is so lovely. I mean, if you apply any critical thought to it whatsoever, the whole thing falls down like a house of cards. But good thing you're not meant to do that with rom-coms. You're meant to just take them for what they are. And it's a lovely story. And the two of them work so, so well together. And when I think of the other rom-coms that I was watching in my peak rom-com phase, I don't think there was any other pair that stood out particularly as one that kept coming up. There was a bunch of random pairings. Obviously, we have our Katherine Heigls with whatever the flavour of the month man was. I always remember a couple with Justin Timberlake and Mila Kunis. I think that was No Strings Attached. I think that one was. There was also a couple with Ashton Kutcher.
Ashton Kutcher still continues to flog this dead horse. I mean, what was that recent one on Netflix with him and Reese Witherspoon? They had zero chemistry together. And do you remember at the premiere, they were so awkward together on the red carpet? He wouldn't stand close to her. Because he thought, well, that's inappropriate. But it was just so odd to see a movie launched, a romantic comedy, with these two standing so far apart from each other on the red carpet. No wonder that didn't
It was
work.
like an anti-chemistry. It was like if you got 2 negative magnets and put them next to each other and they were both trying desperately to get far away. I mean, you do need that kind of chemistry, even if it doesn't really come across in normal life, like a romantic chemistry. Obviously, it's probably a great marketing ploy if you get your 2 leading people from any kind of romance movie and get them out in public and they look really cozy, they look really romantic. There's plenty of that. Most recent one, it's not a comedy, but the upcoming romance film with Sydney Sweeney, getting all the rumours going amongst fans on Twitter that they've started an affair. Now, I'm not sure I'm convinced that's true. I think it's just clever marketing.
So, as much as we clearly love romantic comedies, and to quote Ted Lasso, we are rom-communists, totally devoted to these things. That we do admit that there are certain problematic things with them. Certainly, these dated storylines, the fact that they're all almost exclusively middle class, white, straight, and young. So how refreshing to see recent release Book Club The Next Chapter with Jane Fonda and Candice Bergen and Diane Keaton and Don Johnson and Andy Garcia all loving it up on a trip to Italy, a move which has been called by others, not me, wrinkly romance, and that's good because everybody falls in love, and it shouldn't just happen to Katherine Heigl and Kate Hudson. Jane Fonda, absolutely fantastic as ever in this in this film. You know, I was with book club Next Chapter for so long until there was a scene in it which I thought was so completely ridiculous. It was when Jane and the girls arrive at Rome train station, and some obviously fake porters come along and say, "Can we mind your bags for you and check them in?" And of course, disappear with the luggage. And I thought, no, that could never happen to anyone. So, you know, afterwards, I called my mother to complain. You know, I should have told the film, and I said, "Oh, as if anyone would be so dumb as to fall for that." And my mother said, "Oh, that happened to your father and I on our honeymoon at Rome train station. Yes, some fake porters took our luggage. So maybe I should never knock rom-coms again, because certainly Book Club, the Next Chapter, one of the more accurate portrayals of travels in Europe that we've ever seen. What do you think that? Because that's a sequel of course, and it's maybe playing to an audience who were used to going to the cinema to see romantic comedies, but now with so many rom-coms gone to streaming, there's a generation who've grown up without this tradition. So is this maybe, you know, the way forward? Is it rom-coms with older casts that are going to go into cinemas? What are the economics at play here?
You know what? I would say that that's probably a good shout, and that if they're looking to do a cinema release, the studio, they're going to have more luck with an older audience, because sort of my generation and younger, all the rom-coms that we have consumed in the most recent years, obviously back in my day, back when I was about 12,
Grandma.
wrinkly romance for me. We were still getting our DVDs, but these days everything goes directly to streaming when we come to sort of your rom-coms that are targeted to a younger audience. You've got stuff like a Kissing Booth, and it's like 2 to 5 sequels, and All the Boys I've Loved Before, and it's 1 to 5 sequels, I don't know, but they all go straight to streaming. They're the kind of thing you can consume really casually, whether it is the kids of today having their sleepovers and painting each other's toenails, or people my age drinking a glass of wine and watching something rubbish in the evening. But it has that kind of comfort at home value to it that I think we people my age expect, because we've never actually had the need or the occasion arisen to go and see a rom-com at the cinema. I feel like it has a completely different value, whereas my mum would absolutely go and see a rom-com at the cinema, especially if it was something she could relate to, where it had an older cast in it. And I think she'll, if she hasn't already, she'd definitely be interested in that movie.
Well, this is such an opportunity, because let me just drop a name here. I was chatting with Patrick Stewart last week, and now, wouldn't it be great to have him in a rom-com, you know, instead of science fiction? Because all those years now Picard has finished. He no longer has to fly the Starship Enterprise. He's not doing the X-Men movies anymore. So, you know, let him get, you know, some roses and some chocolates, and let him do the romance. There's a whole generation of actors who've missed out on these kind of things. I was also talking to Gary Oldman, and he said, "No one ever cast me in romantic comedies." I thought, I can't imagine why, Gary. You know, after all the psychopaths he's played, you know, that might be a bit challenging, but he's open for it. So yes, I think let's go for it.
You know what? That would entice me more, because I'm so used to seeing Gary Oldman be an absolute little freak on screen. If he gives me the opportunity to come and watch him be Mr. Romance with a bouquet of red roses serenading someone by candlelight, I will be there. I'll come to the cinema.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great shout. So Hollywood, show more imagination in these casting choices. You know, as I said before, it's not just Kate Hudson and Katherine Heigl and Drew Barrymore who fall in love. You know, it can happen to everybody, you know, regardless of age, gender, skin color, whatever. So let's have a big rethink for rom-coms and bring them back. Which brings us to our review slot, and that is a welcomingly diverse rom-com, which has already opened in Britain and just recently opened in the United States. It's Lily James in a movie with a terrible title but a fascinating plot. What's Love Got to Do with It? Amy, why don't you tell our beloved listener what the setup is here and what you thought of it?
Well, this is a very interesting one because it works around a premise of something that a lot of people would consider the complete opposite of romance, and that is the idea of an arranged marriage or an assisted marriage. So we see Lily James as our protagonist, as a freelance documentary filmmaker who, when she finds that her friend is seeking to have his parents help arrange a marriage for him, she asks, "Hey, how about I come along for the ride and make my documentary about what a modern arranged marriage is?" And obviously she's going in with the same kind of mindset that a lot of us will, of, well, there's no romance in that. You just have your parents pick someone they think is suitable and then you sort of make do. But that's what it explores, and it explores how love can come with that, a sense of duty in your relationships, the context of wider family, the really, really important cultural context, and then the valleys between what Lily James and her family have understood in their romantic relationships, their marriages, versus their neighbours of Asian descent just next door. And I thought it was a really interesting way to go about it. It was a new concept. And I love Lily James in general. Ever since I saw her in Yesterday, I just find her unbelievably... I just think she's lovely.
Yeah, she can do it all, and this was an interesting storyline, Love Contractually, you might say, which would have been a much better title than What's Love Got to Do with It, for sure. And this is a movie where you know right from the start the two leads are going to get together, but it's very unpredictable, and it goes in some very unexpected directions, and so the journey of getting to that point is certainly fascinating. It has a great cast, including Emma Thompson, always such great value on screen every time as Lily James' mum in there as well, and it's not afraid to shy away from some controversial topics. In fact, that's the point where the movie is at its best. And huge credit to Jemima Khan. Yes, that Jemima Khan, who wrote and produced this movie. Spoke to her about it recently. She says it took her 12 years to perfect this script. She kept writing and rewriting, much like one of our scripts for Total Hollywood, Amy. It's like so much work that goes into this masterpiece that you enjoy.
Years of preparation.
I really think that What's Love Got to Do with It is a real winner and worth seeking out wherever you access your rom-coms.
Oh, absolutely. I had a great time, and I mean, you not only have you got the great cast in terms of people that you know, like your Lily Jameses and your Emma Thompsons. The newer actors introduced as well all did a fantastic job, and the characters in general I found so believable and so real, especially because the subjects of the film were, like we mentioned earlier, the problem of usually being a bunch of upper middle class white people living in mansions. These were very realistic, normal people who were next door neighbours in a terraced house. And instantly, I feel like I connect more to that because I'm like, oh, that's just like me. I live in a terraced house. I mean, I don't have Emma Thompson as my mum, but I'll have to let that one slide for now.
So, to recap, what have we learned today on Total Hollywood? We've learned that we've ruined Love Actually for you. We've ruined Pretty Woman for you, but don't worry, you've still got What's Love Got to Do with It. That comes right again. And book club, next chapter, totally believable, so go with that as well. And Hollywood, somebody give a romantic role to Gary Oldman, because that is something I would love to see. Final thoughts, Amy?
I'm rooting for Gary Oldman, and that is all I'm going to be able to think about for the next few days. So I thank you for bringing that to my attention.
We'll always have podcasts.